think will
You
quit?
take him to school.
Who think will quit? You're
eat
wrong.
so many
You're
jabs.
going to get the shock of your life.
No, it's better to burn out than fade away.
There we go.
He is not elite yet. Tell me one elite fighter he's beat.
You want to see what the Silk said?
Yes.
I don't know whether to float or gloat.
What size feet is he, Ben?
Hello and welcome to Sugar, Silk and Stretch, arguably the best boxing podcast in the world. My name's Ben Doughty.
My name is Nostra Silkus.
Yeah. For anybody who's interested in where he gets that handle from, by the way, obviously it's a play on Nostradamus, the famous what century seer? I forget what century he was predicting the future in those quatrains, but people should be familiar with it. Silk is 70. He has a 75% success ratio in predicting big fights on this show, Sugar, Silk and Stretch. I have a 63% success rate.
75% I mean, that's just mind-boggling. 75%.
Well, it is mind-boggling. I like the way your cup is color coordinated with your sweatshirt. Is kind of cool. I know that you pay a lot of attention to these details. You know.
No, actually,
one thing. Yeah, you hadn't thought about it. No.
No. Actually, it was absolutely. Hey, Danny. We see Danny Graham's here. Thanks
Danny
for joining
Graham
us,
is one of our most loyal fans. Danny is an ex-boxer. He boxed amateur like me, but he took it pretty seriously. He trained at Gleason's back in the day, similar era to when I was there, but we didn't meet there. And he sparred. I think Danny. I'm not sure, but I think he was similar kind of welterweight, like middleweight, like myself when he was younger. And he sparred with some of the guys like Vivian Harris and John Duddy, some of the guys that I boxed with when I was there. So he's one of us, and he loves. Danny is one of those people who's like, "What happened?" You know, when we have to take a rain check on a Friday or a Sunday, he's like, "What happened to the podcast, pal?" And he's actually a bit disturbed about it. The other fan we have like that is Richie. Richie, fuck it, I'm gonna say his name, Richie Anderson, who's a well-known guy back in the day in the East End of London. He's one of our very biggest fans. I hope he doesn't mind me mentioning him. Who else? There's a few of them. Ellen K. Bromson, the attorney from New Jersey. She's another one of our diehards. Danny was a middleweight, by the way. So Silk, you talk about predictions of 75% versus 63%, whatever. One thing I'm quite good at is the financial side of betting. I don't bet very often, but when I do, or when I recommend bets, I'm not bad at looking for value in the odds. And what I said to people, the value bets, as far as I was concerned, ahead of last night's big fight at the T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas, was Canelo on points. And I put a little status out the night before saying, does the fight go the distance? I didn't even want to ask people who wins because no one was picking Berlanga in my circle. So I just said, does the fight go the distance or not? And most people said no, but I wasn't usually surprised to see it go 12 rounds. I don't know about what your take was, Silk.
No, I wasn't. I wasn't surprised to see it go 12 at all. In fact, that's kind of Canelo's MO. He's doing the kind of thing like at one point, Roy kind of did that too, I felt. Roy Jones. And a lot of punchers kind of do that. They kind of make this deal with the guy. They hit him, and after they hit him and they hurt him, they're like, well, if you stay cool, you'll go the distance. But if you want to make this a fight, it's going to be harder for you than you thought it was going to be or than you anticipated. I think Floyd Mayweather also did some of that as well. Like once you got a guy in check, as long as he stayed in line and went along with the status quo, you're going to go the distance. But if you want to make it a tussle, we're going to make it a tussle.
Yeah, whereas Marvin Hagler, for instance, had a different kind of ethos where of his 12 successful world middleweight title defenses, only one of them went the distance. That was Duran in November '83. So Hagler had this very much. He had it wasn't grammatically correct, but he had the T-shirt "destruct and destroy," and he wanted to get you out there for an early shower as early as he could, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. Even when he was bouncing up on his toes, you know what I mean, which is kind of unusual. I remember when I was exposed to Hagler the first time, and I saw him, and it's crazy, intensely muscular, physically developed, his attitude, everything about that came out of his mouth. And then it was destruct, destroy, and just murder people. And then I remember seeing him getting up on his toes and boxing, like when he boxed against Antifermo. And it was absolutely this contradiction of terms.
And Simpson. Well, you say it's a contradiction, but I feel Hagler's image blinded people to, obviously not like to yourself, but it threw people off the scent of his actual style. When he was a rhythm fighter and a little bit of a counter puncher sometimes, he liked to move and circle bilaterally. And against Tony Simpson, he did it. Against Benny Briscoe, he did it. Hagler was not this seek and destroy Joe Fraser-esque kind of
No, he
guy
was
at
not.
all. But let's talk about Canelo and Berlanga. I thought Edgar acquitted himself honourably last night. I think I think it was Mark Kriegel or whoever it was, the commentator, it might have been Chris Mannix, sorry, said they had a game plan at least. I mean, perhaps he didn't stick it on the line enough, but I don't think he was in survival mode exactly. I thought he stayed with Canelo, showed a lot of heart and resilience and some skills, that was. I think his stock has possibly risen as a result of the fight. Maybe I don't know whether you.
Oh, sure, absolutely. His stock is definitely raised. It's interesting. Very few fighters lay it on the line today, and maybe it's because you can always get another title shot, or very few fighters will put their absolute physical selves and
on the line.
Not only their physicality, but even their their legend, they're on the line. Like, look at back in the day. I mean, Bobby Chacon, Rolando Navarrete,
real hunger, and like there may never be another chance.
Every single guy that fought, that you really literally had to kill him. Vito Antuofermo, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like these guys, it's just insane. But it's absolutely like that's part of boxing. I think that's the most visibly. I don't know. Is the biggest part of boxing that's changed, I believe.
Well, and one thing I know that annoys you, like it does me, Silk, is this really ubiquitous, overriding narrative that fans these days, just regular Joe Blow fans, talk like they're businessmen who have a stake in this, and they'll say, "Nah, Canelo's earned the right to do whatever he wants to do now. He can pick who he wants to fight." And you're like, "No, he hasn't." You said the whole point of being a fighter and a champion is you fight who you have to fight, and you still kind of believe in the playground bragging rights, law of the jungle, even at the highest level, don't you? That's what's in your
I absolutely believe that. I don't think it's fair at all that he fought a whole bunch of guys earlier in his career and he beat them and he lost a couple and all that kind of stuff. But he's earned the right to fight who he wants to fight and go out, you know what I mean, with his own grand parade, doing what he wants to do. Absolutely not. If you're not, if you can't hold on to the title, then you get out the way. That's all there is to it. You fight who you have to fight. You do not fight who you want to fight. No one should be allowed to fight the fights they want to fight. I'm not just saying it about.
And the trouble is, they've brainwashed this generation of fans into thinking that. Like another guy, when I said I'm not saying that Canelo has absolutely ducked and swerved fighters as such, I just think that there's been a certain timing and a certain micromanagement and certain conditions he used to impose catchweights on guys at middleweight when he was supposedly fighting at middleweight. And Leroy Nicholas, who's a regular contributor to my Facebook page, and he does some brilliant work with his Sweet Science Foundation, teaching in schools and youth inclusion. He said, "Well, isn't that what a good manager does? Risk minimization, risk aversion. And if it was your son or he was your fighter, would you do anything any different?" I said, "Yeah, but not everybody is Canelo's manager. We should have journalists. We should have officials. The manager is hustling for the fighter, but not everybody should be going in that direction." And it feels like in today's industry, everybody's playing the manager.
Ben, that's why they say it's illegal for fighters or managers to also be promoters. Now. That's exactly why, because it's a conflict of interest. There's no way you're going to put yourself in harm's way. You're going to do everything better. Everything is going to favor the fighter who owns the promotional company. Now here, all of a sudden, I don't know how it came to, but all of a sudden, like, you have fighters who are also the promoters of their own fights. Their name is right there, flashed in front of everybody. And everything, everyone kisses the butt of the person with the money, and that's the fighter, that's the promoter. So it's absolutely unfair.
And exactly that. And the thing is, even though they said it was illegal for a promoter to be a manager as well, or vice versa, that happens. It's the line between a promoter and a manager these days have been very much blurred. Because Eddie Hearn is Anthony Joshua has his own management company. like 258 Management, I believe they're called. But you know as well as I do, to an extent, that Eddie Hearn there's a degree of management of that guy. He's not just promoting him; he is managing him. And obviously Don King, his system was that he would get his son Carl
promoters
to
do have
manage
their
fighters and
favorites,
promote
right?
him.
I mean, AJ makes him his most money, I'm sure. So he's going
Absolutely.
to be given more to AJ than anything else. He's going to like openly favoritize him, if I could use such a word. You know what I mean? He's going to that
would
kid
have
is
done,
going to be
but-
his favorite. He's not. So I don't know how it goes exactly in terms of, you know, like when it comes to negotiation, does Eddie just say, well, this is what the fight's worth, or does AJ say, this is what I want for the fight? Those kinds of things I do not know. But I do know that when you do officially have your name as the promoter, like, you know, AJ doesn't have his name officially as the promoter of the fight. That's Eddie Hearn's thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's absolutely different. It says Canelo Promotions, and who's the main event? Canelo.
And you know what? Canelo apparently gets 80% of all revenue that's anything to do with his fight.
But
So
there
what
you go.
he said, if you drink a soda in the arena, he gets 80% of that. You know, it's a franchise.
Yeah, I mean, and that's just, I mean, it just doesn't make any sense compared to the rules of what boxing was. I don't know if maybe that's changed now and that's all okay and it's all in the open, but I'd never heard any announcement of it, and it just wasn't like that back in the day. And that's how you have fighters with different sways, and why fights go to certain individuals that really shouldn't, you know, those kinds of controversies. But for boxing to keep its honor, it has to stay fair and it has to stay even. There can't be any favorites. It's like saying, what was the one thing they used to say, Ben? It was like, you have to KO the champ in order to win, or something like that.
To get a draw. You've not got to knock him out to get a draw.
No. There was another saying. It wasn't. It was.
You've got to take the title.
Yeah,
you've got to take the title. You've got to rip the title.
Yeah,
away.
you got to take the title from the champ. Like, the champ can't lose a split decision. I mean, that's just ridiculous.
Oh, it's
why not?
nonsense.
If he lost a split decision, he lost it.
You should judge a world title fight with all the marbles, like the fight of the century, with the same value base. You would judge a 4-round fight at the York Hall or the Old Blue Horizon, the same value base. And if somebody wins by a nose, then that's what they win by. And anything else is unworkable in practice and immoral in principle, quite honestly. But see, Silk, we are absolutely bound and gagged by cliches in boxing and narratives, especially in this era when the information is so easy to export on the internet.
Hey, listen.
What people keep saying is, this is what I'm tired of hearing, right? I don't think Canelo, or sometimes they talk about other fighters, but let's say Canelo Benavidez. I don't think Canelo's scared of Benavidez. I think X, Y, and Z, and Y and F. And it's like, you know what? If he's never going to fight him in a million years, what's the fucking difference between being scared of him and just not fighting him for loads of other non-fear-based reasons? What is the difference?
Yeah, there really isn't. And I believe you're 100% right. Two things that are the biggest destruction of boxing that happen inside the ring and outside the ring: cliches and clinches.
Yes. And you are the cliche buster. I mean, I always felt I was very much in that direction, but you take it to another level, because the other night, I was on with Gary the other night, Friday, briefly, and I said, yeah, but Silk doesn't believe that weight is an advantage or size or whatever it was. And he said, and so Gary said, yeah, but we do. But it was, you take it to another level. But it's good to never swim with the stream and to have everything proven, because otherwise you're simply repeating what has always been said. Same thing, you know, most people don't know what they're talking about.
How do you get change?
Yeah, most people don't know what they're talking about when they say Sugar Ray Robinson was the greatest fighter of all time. He may have been, and as you know, I tend to think he probably was. But regardless of that, most people just say it because it's said. When people say styles make fights, they don't know what they're talking about. They just say it because people say it. When people say Harold Graham was the greatest fighter, the best British fighter never to win a world title, it's an absolute default. And the people who say it, they don't have an entry level of knowledge of elite fighters throughout that whole historical period of British boxing. They don't know anything about Owen Moran or Len Harvey or Ted Kid. Sorry, he was a champion, but you know what I mean? So they're not really qualified to make that call. They've just heard lots of people say it, so they keep repeating it. And that's how life works, right? To an extent. I mean, in other subcultures, I'm sure it's the same.
You really wish that you were able to like repeat something that has like that. That's founded on reality, but we tend to repeat things that sound what's best to us. What we want to hear, we repeat. and then once we repeat these things and repeat fallacies, people who are speaking truth have to undo the fallacy, and sometimes you just don't want to do it. It's just like, you know what? All right, go ahead and think that. If you want to think that, then you know what I mean. Then go ahead and think that. But we shouldn't. We should be the vanguard. We should be the ones that set up and say, no, this is this, and this is how it should be, and that's how you know what I mean. Like,
yeah,
we've
I
got
think
to
John
take up
Scully is
that
still doing
charge.
a good job of that, because on the undercard, Caleb Plant beat a guy called Crumby or something like that.
Yeah,
And I didn't see that fight because I didn't get up until the main event last night. But Scully said, forget it. He said, I like Caleb Plant. He said, but stop. No, you're not and the new. You're not a world champion just because you won an interim title. And I've shared the status, and I said, I'm going to keep banging this drum until I'm not here anymore on this mortal coil.
Did they yeah?
Did they what?
Did they say Plant was the world champ because of that win?
Well, yeah, they will do, won't they? Because when someone wins an interim title, listen, Daniel Dubois was an interim champion until Usyk handed him the full WBA belt. And then now when Anthony Joshua fights him next week, if Joshua wins, Eddie Hearn and everybody else is going to say he's a 3-time world heavyweight champion. Absolute, complete.
No, but they said he's interim. Interim means in.
But what's the difference? That you didn't win it you didn't win it in any meaningful way anyway. Interim is like
It's like you're qualified for a title fight.
What it means is it's another word for number one contender, but it comes with a belt and another sanctioning fee, so which makes people think that something else is going on that it isn't, you know. But the point being that we need to smash that to pieces, ideally. But to be honest, it's a losing battle because it's out of control. You know, the IBO titles. I spoke to a kid the other day at the press conference in Canning Town on Thursday who's fighting for an IBO title, and I tried to say, listen, you know how I feel about this, and you know you're not going to be the world champion if you win this fight, and because the other guy you're beating is not an elite world class fighter. It's just, but people say, you know, the IBO title is a bargaining chip, and it is, I guess, you know.
Mm-hmm. Before we go any further, you said something earlier, and I want to ask you what exactly that is, because I don't quite get it when people say it. And it's a common thing said. A lot of people say, what does rhythm fighter mean? What is a rhythm fighter? I get people say, you know, I couldn't get my rhythm. I hear fighters say it, I couldn't get my rhythm down. And what is that?
Hagler most often bouncing on his toes, always moving his head. Someone like Donald Curry would say stock still until he did something or you made him react, right? Hagler, lots of movement, lots of foot feints all the time, always the head bobbing and weaving, and lots and lots of movement, lots of rhythm. Hagler was a rhythm fighter. Sugar Ray Leonard was a rhythm fighter, absolutely. Muhammad Ali was a rhythm fighter, but you're probably going to try and pull rank there and say, no. What he had was timing. And timing's what you.
What all of them had was timing. They have a way in which they fight, and each one has a unique way of fighting, right? Moving into position, moving out of position, all the rest of that kind of stuff. But rhythm has something to do with two individuals that are working together, right? Like maybe a team, for instance, that's working together. Or a doubles tennis match, or you know what I mean, some sort of volleyball. Everyone's in rhythm, they're all in sync. You have a band, an orchestra, okay, that's the rhythm, I get that. But for one individual, it's timing. Timing is the most important attribute when it comes to things like that, like being able to hit somebody and being able to defend from a punch as well. It's timing, it isn't rhythm. The first thing you should always be mentioning is timing. Absolutely.
You say that. I'm not with that. I think rhythm is very important. I think certain fighters were absolutely rhythm-based fighters and some of them weren't. I think Hagler absolutely was one of those guys. I might be wrong. You might be wrong.
No, I might not be wrong. I'm not wrong. It's about timing. If you don't do things at the right time, you'll never get your rhythm. Rhythm is something that rhythm is something maybe you've
Joe Frazier, absolute rhythm fighter.
Right?
Joe Frazier, an absolute rhythm fighter.
You're a rhythm fighter after you're successful. When you're successful, okay, you found your rhythm or your timing, or everything's working your way. But before then, it's all time. It has to be timing. There's no way it can be rhythm.
Do you know what? This is not something. I think of how much time I got left in my life and things I want to achieve still. as if it gets any better than this, being side to side with Michael Elijah Jr. And I think this is not one of the things I want to waste the rest of my life arguing about rhythm or timing.
Well, we'll just bring it up sporadically at the right times.
We will bring it up sporadically, rhythmically almost, or randomly. Timing.
No, when the time's right, we'll bring it up.
When the time is right, we'll bring it up. Listen, so that knockdown last night, the left hook knockdown in the third round. I want to show it again for the simple fact that I made the trouble of putting it in the videos. So should we have a little look at it and then
let's take a look and we'll discuss it, because it wasn't what they said it was either.
No, okay, yeah. I mean, it looked like a. Let's not talk. Should we just watch it and then we'll talk?
Okay. Finds himself in the corner, and Canelo has a measure, but Berlanga's jab. That'll disrupt Canelo, and of course you keep Canelo from resetting his feet. Then you have an opportunity to do so. Canelo cracked Berlanga. He goes down here in round.
There you go. It looked like a counter, but it wasn't a counter. They both jabbed at the same time, and Canelo got the best of it when they both jabbed. And then it was as if Canelo thought maybe the other guy will jab again, Berlanga, but he didn't. And then Canelo just turned it into a long left hook, and Berlanga dropped his right hand sufficiently for that left hook to land sweet.
Yeah, I did see it slightly different. I saw, Canelo threw the jab, stung him with the jab, and when he moved his left hand again, Canelo, Berlanga thought it was going to be another jab and went to block it, and because there was no jab, he came around and opened himself up to the hook, and so the intent, Canelo threw a jab, then his next punch was a hook, and
a long hook.
He didn't hook off the jab; it was a full jab, pulled it back, threw his left hand again. Berlanga thought another jab was coming when it was actually a hook, missed the block, and got hit and got dropped. It was that simple. So it wasn't like bang bang. He didn't hook off the jab like.
No, he didn't. You're right. You're absolutely right.
Bang.
You hook off a jab. You like you just said. You're like jab, hook, like that, with no premeditation except those two punches.
Exactly.
Like you said, what he did, he threw a jab and then he disguised his supposed follow-up jab. He disguised the hook as another jab initially.
I don't even know if he disguised it, Ben. I honestly don't. I think he just he knew he was going to throw the hook, and it was Berlanga who his prognosticator ability to prognosticate, to tell what it's going to be, failed him. He thought it was so he committed to a block like right here, and the punch came around here because he committed to the block, missed the block, wasn't there, and his hand went down and he was exposed to the hook. So he actually overcommitted, I would say, Berlanga. I mean, he took the shot well. He was bright-eyed when he hit the canvas, and he got up and he did well. He didn't show any signs of being hurt. In fact, I thought later on in the fight he was probably a little bit more hurt when he got caught. But again, Canelo now is the kind of guy, he's been in it for a while. It's kind of like sharks will do this, or certain pack animals. They'll bite and they'll let you bleed out instead of going in there and working to get you out. Because if they work to get you out, they also put themselves in a position where they can also be hit and hurt. And so it's kind of like this kind of deal you make. It's like, okay, I'm just going to keep you in check here. We're going to do some work. But if you start going for it, I'm going to go for it. And you know how that's going to turn out for you. And I think that's kind of how the fight went, from about midway on. I don't know if Berlanga put everything on the line, which there's nothing wrong with like that. But I mean, not like we did in like the 70s and in the 80s when guys, you just put your physical self on the line. It doesn't matter. Nothing matters when you're in the ring.
There is more of a kind of business ethos now, isn't there? There is. Sugar Ray Leonard said it to me a long time ago when he said, I think it's gotten away from mano, and it's more of a business thing nowadays. And I think inevitably we see that in the ring and outside the ring. It's just, maybe that's evolution. Maybe people have become more sophisticated and more savvy, but from fighters to managers to promoters and stuff. But consequently, we have a different game and a different landscape, which is why So somebody agreeing with you about something here. Great analogy, that Silk. Yep. I,
But I mean, but check it out. Let's even go back to like the light heavyweight division in the 70s and early 80s.
yeah, and the early 80s.
I mean, come on. You look at Saad Muhammad, Marvin Johnson, Yaki Lopez, Jesse Burnett, all those guys. They're it's just insane what they put on the line. Like that they really commit to the fight. It's I don't know. It's like breathtaking when you take a look at the difference from fighting back then and you look at it now, and it's just, yeah, they're the same in that everyone has gloves on and you want to punch a man in the head and everything, but in terms of I know in terms of giving yourself to the fight, it's just not like that anymore. It's like, okay, well, I can always do it again another day. And I'm not saying that it's particularly of Berlanga. I'm just saying that in boxing as a whole, like Berlanga gave his best, he gave his all. I understand that, and the intent, the instinct of an individual, like you have the reflex to defend yourself, and that's very important. I just. Maybe some of it is the 70s, 80s fighters weren't as defensively adept or weren't taught.
So, do you know, someone tried
defensive
to tell me that.
idiosyncrasies, because if they were taught the defensive idiosyncrasies, maybe they would also, not go all the way out like that too.
Well, that's an interesting point, and I think at various eras when you mentioned that, because I was talking to one of the guys who boxed white collar, and he's one of them guys who was talented, and he probably could have gone somewhere in the sport if he'd have taken it up when he was younger. But because now he's in his early 40s, he has flair, and he's knocked a bunch of people out on white collar shows, but he's too old to really make a go of it. But he's a bright guy, not a bad coach as well. And he said,
well, what would happen to him if he were to try? He would lose.
Silk, that's got nothing to do with the point, and you're trying to take me off.
I just want to know what he would do because he's old. But anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, honestly, he ain't going to turn pro now. He's not going to turn pro. But the point is, I was telling him that the 80s era was deeper and better, and I was willing to back that up with plenty of names. And he said they weren't as defensively good. And I said, what fight did you watch? And he said Leonard Hearns won. And he said they're not as defensively good as the fighters today. And I said I don't agree with that. I said what I think is they're offensively better than a lot of fighters today. Both of them, for a start. Absolutely. And it was. And you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs, and that was a massive omelette, at the time,
Yeah.
So but he had this belief, at least, that fighters today were more defensively savvy on a default basis. That was one thing.
Yeah. But in general, I could kind of see that because it's practiced more. Like people talk about it more. It's kind of more in fashion because Floyd Mayweather did it. It's just like when Ali came out with the foot movement, all of a sudden obviously Sugar Ray did as well, but I'm talking about more modern day, like my modern time.
Well, Willie Pep did, didn't he?
People came out with foot movement because they saw Ali move that way.
Well, Willie Pep used to move like that for 15 rounds too.
I mean, Sugar Ray Robinson and Willie Pep and fighters of that nature, you didn't see how, like, not my generation didn't see how they fought. Like
because you
how they're available today was not how it was available in the 70s.
Absolutely not. Do you know how spoiled we are today? Can you imagine? Because when I was 10 or 11 years old and first learning about these legendary fighters and reading all about it and devouring all that stuff, the whole idea of when Joe Louis died in 1981 and they showed a precious 10 seconds of him on the news at 10 saying the American legendary boxer Joe Louis has died, age 68, and you'd see a little bit of crackling footage on terrestrial TV and it'd be gold dust. If someone had told me you'll be able to get it up at any of Joe Lewis's fights, pretty much, most of them certainly, you'll be able to watch whenever you feel like it on your TV, on your phone. You'll have a little computer in your pocket which will get all that stuff up. We're really spoiled today, aren't we? Because we can really watch nearly anything. And then, obviously, we lament the things we still can't find footage of, like the Hagler versus Finnegan fights and things like that, And you know what? I'd spent years trying to find Alvin Hayes with a pink Zorro mask doing that kind of dancing routine when he fought Jimmy Paul. And eventually I found it this year.
Yeah, you can. Wow, I've never seen that fight on, I guess, on YouTube. I haven't really looked for it, but I do remember when he came in with the pink mask and he did the Michael Jackson, and I do remember that. I thought he did a great job too. I was like, wow, that's really good.
Yeah. And it was pretty outrageous at the time. I guess it predated the Nassim Hamid kind of ring entrances and stuff. But he wound up bent over the bottom rope, courtesy of Jimmy Paul's offensive, didn't he? So that was one of the things that it's a shame it worked out that way for him. And I think Alvin Hayes died in the end, didn't he? Did he get shot or something? I think in Detroit.
You know what? I couldn't tell you. Now was he Chicago or Detroit?
Detroit. He was from a Kronk. It was a Kronk fighter.
He was from Kronk. Because he wasn't in the Kronk colors and stuff like that.
Yeah, he was.
Was he?
Actually, you know what?
No, I don't think he was.
I say that.
Yeah, I think he was in black or something.
Yeah, but he was definitely from Detroit. But let me check that out, because you're right. He may not have boxed in Kronk colors, actually. No, because Jimmy Paul boxed in Kronk colors.
There you go.
But Alvin Hayes.
Yeah.
Wait a second. Maybe he wasn't from Detroit. You want to check this out now?
Sure, let's do it.
Okay.
I love being right in front of everybody.
Yeah.
I love this. Oh my God.
I thought Alvin was from Detroit too, though. But
I thought maybe he was from Chicago.
I'm pretty sure he's not from Chicago. So if he's not from Chicago, you're still not right, okay?
I'm right on the other stuff.
He might have been from Michigan, though. He might have been from Michigan. Let me see. You're really good at filling in when I'm on the computer. I appreciate that.
No, I love the suspense. I'm watching you. I can't wait to see it register on your face. I think everybody watching right now.
Detroit, Michigan.
Oh, he was Detroit, Michigan. Okay.
Yeah, I'm very seldom wrong, Silk.
Well, listen, I did say either Detroit or Chicago, and I did say his colors, and he wasn't from Kronk, because you said he was.
We need to look into that, because Jimmy Paul was definitely a Kronk fighter.
Yeah.
So was he just a rival Kronk fighter who wasn't with rival Detroit fighter who wasn't with the Kronk? I thought Alvin was, but that's an interesting question, because Jimmy would have been rocking the Kronk colors. So were they stablemates suddenly become rivals, or what? We'll do some.
I'm sure they probably knew each other. If they didn't fight each other in the amateurs, they knew somebody that fought the other. Yeah, I mean it's a small pond, right? It's not a big. Yeah. It's not a big thing, but.
Do you know what Dave Wolf, Ray Mancini's manager, once said that Ray, when he was a WBA lightweight champion, he said he wouldn't fight Alvin Too Sweet Hayes. He said because we'll fight the top half or the bottom half. He said, but no way am I putting a guy who's 5'6" in with a guy who's 6'1". And he said to the editor of Ring Magazine, or the interviewer, he said, "You asked me if I'm ducking him? Yeah, I'm ducking him."
And ducking him because of his height is one of the most inane things I've ever heard in my life.
Tell me about it.
Making sense. Because he's tall, you're gonna duck him.
You're not gonna fight him because he's tall. Yeah.
It's like, then why are you a fighter? Go bake cookies or something. You know what I mean? All cookies have to be the same size.
Yeah, and the trouble is now, every single fan on the internet now be like, "No, he's shrewd, he's smart, he's clever." See, you do the same. It's risk reward, you see, and that's why I'm glad there's still a guy like you around, and John Scully, who will say, "No, hell with that. Are you a fighter or go bake cookies?" Because there still needs to be some nobility and integrity in this much maligned subculture, does there not? So there should be.
No, absolutely. I mean, like we were saying, honor is so important when it comes to boxing. Like when you're fighting, your true character comes out, and your true character comes on display, and that's how people could then look at you and can acknowledge something good about you. That's in win and in win, whether you win or lose, people are going to acknowledge something true about you. They can like hang on to that. They see that. They see your nature, basically, and that's what's beautiful about the sport. It's not like other teammates who can affect something and you're colored a different way, but you're really just tagging on to another person's ability and saying it's your characteristic trait because somebody else shown it or a few other guys shown it. In boxing, it's real. You really do show your inner workings.
And this is the thing, Barry Jones, former WBA super featherweight champion, is a popular pundit in the UK now. And we should get him on this show, actually. It would be good to have him on. But he lost his title to Acelino Freitas, yeah? who was obviously the best sort of featherweight in the world. And it was one of them things: if you fight this guy, he's taking the title, but just negotiate a good purse for yourself when you sign on the dotted line to fight this guy. And he actually floored Freitas. Yeah, he put Freitas over, which not too many had done. But then he got knocked down 6 times himself before being stopped. And I said to him one time when we were doing an interview in a cafe in Surrey, I said, "Are you proud in a way though of your swan song?" And he said, "Oh, it's the proudest moment of my life."
Yeah.
He said,
I mean,
getting up that 6 times. He said, "That's the proudest moment of my life."
Yes. Yes, that's what people want to see. They, you win, that's a bonus. Of course, if you get back up and win, that's a bonus. That's great. That's even more so. But if you show character in the ring, like the worst thing that people want to see is kind of what they saw last night in the fight in
Erislandy Lara and Danny Garcia.
Yes.
Tell me about that, because I missed that, Silk.
Okay, so maybe the first couple of rounds I didn't see, but from what I heard, they were just more or less the same. The punch output was extremely low, and I'm not sure for what reason. Like there can be reasons the punch output is low, and you're figuring them out, and everything's being calculated, all the rest of that kind of stuff. But just throughout the fight, no matter what, from round 1 to round, I think, what did it end in, the 10th round? 9th round?
I think he retired after the 9th, from what I saw.
Yeah, and nothing was happening. Well, here's the thing: Danny Garcia doesn't have that. That's not his image. Like he's a fighter, and he comes and he lets his hands go. But for some reason, he wasn't doing that.
Well, do you know something, Silk? All right, it was a WBA middleweight title fight, yeah? Talking about the absurdity of today's business. Garcia had 1 fight in 4 years. He'd had 1 fight since losing to Errol Spence 4 years ago, yes? And that was at light middleweight. He'd never boxed at middleweight in his life. He'd been inactive for 2 years. And they made the fight at 157. They made a middleweight title fight with a weight limit of 157. And they wonder why they don't get a great fight.
Yeah. There's all sorts of things wrong going. There's also.
And how many weight world champion would Garcia claim to be if he'd have won? I forget. I don't keep tabs anymore because it doesn't mean anything to me. But I'm sure that he'd have been like a 3-weight champ or something. If he'd
I think 4, because I think I heard 4 because I thought he won junior welterweight, and junior middleweight. I don't know.
You know what? He probably did, and who cares?
Yeah.
Sorry to say it that way, but do you know what? You know when Wilfred Benitez won the light middleweight title, WC light middleweight title versus Morris Hope in May of 1981, he became the first Puerto Rican fighter to win world titles at 3 weights, and he was only the 5th boxer in history to have done that at all. The others were Barney Ross,
Henry Armstrong,
Bob Fitzsimmons, Barney Ross, Henry Armstrong, and I believe Alexis Arguello. He may have done it.
Yeah,
I'm not sure if he'd done it. I'm not sure if he'd done it before Benitez did, but it was. There may be somebody I'm forgetting. Canzoneri, Ross, Fitzsimmons, and Armstrong. They were the only 4 people who did it until Benitez did it, right? And then Arguello was the 5th man to do it, and so on and so on. Okay. Whereas now, Mikey Garcia won 4. Adrian Broner won 4. We can't respect those straps. I'm sorry to say it, but we can't.
Yeah. Well, they were also talking about Garcia and the announcers, the 3 announcers, and where he is in terms of his greatness, and should he be in a Hall of Fame, or will he be there one day?
Will he get there? He should not get in there ever.
Well, based on what his record is now, and they said, and I think 2 of the 3 said yes, he absolutely should be. Abner and somebody else.
Nonsense.
Yeah, they're saying that he should be in, and hey, it's okay. You do not have to be in there if you do not qualify. And I think boxing needs some of that in order to make it special that you're there.
Well, as you know, they
try to have 4 or 5 fighters every year come in, and boxing just isn't like that. One guy probably deserves to be in there every year. Induction.
As you know, I really like Marlon Starling, but I don't think he belongs. And Scully is forever banging the drum for him about he's not even in the Hall of Fame. Marlon shouldn't be, right? He's close, but no cigar. Not
I
dominant enough,
need to.
not
I
consistent
obviously, I
enough.
think I really need to look at his record and look at his career. I know that I've seen him do a lot of things. I've never looked at him and said, "Wow, he's like an incredible fighter." That like who I would see as they have this special Sugar Ray level type fighter, but you know, he definitely beat a lot of good guys, and he's
He was a fine fighter and one of my favorite fighters of the 80s, definitely.
yeah.
But you could learn a lot from him. You know, you could learn an awful lot from him. And he was kind of unique in some of what he did, his style.
He was unique,
so I love that.
but unique doesn't guarantee being
Thank
one
you.
of the greatest fighters of all time either, or Hall of Fame.
If you look
I
at
think
the
they need to
first,
be a little bit more discerning when making those decisions, because
they do, but like you said, Silk, and it's the same with the world titles today. It's a commercial thing. It's a supply and demand. They need to keep inducting people every year, so they lower the bar a little bit. You know, I mean, Ray Mancini shouldn't be in there in the cheap seats, and I like Ray a lot. Lovely guy. But he shouldn't be in there, you know. Carl Froch is in there. Should he be? I don't know. Ricky Hatton, once again, I don't know. If they put Hatton and Froch in, what about Ben and Eubank? I've never thought they belong, but you could argue that they. Do you know what I mean? So when you look at the very first year of inductions, which I believe was 1990, every single person in there was a stone cold all-time great for the very first ceremony, and I'm comfortable with that because you could never argue against any of them being in there. Barry McGuigan shouldn't be in there.
You think Barry McGuigan should be?
No, he shouldn't be. He's in there.
Oh, and he is. Oh, I see.
Yeah, man.
Yeah, it's it always comes down. It is always very political when it comes to pugilism. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You think it's like it's the most basic, elementary, primitive way we have to solve a dispute or answer a question, fighting. Yet it gets to the point where fighting doesn't resolve whether a person is great or not. It almost doesn't make any sense. It's a contradiction of terms.
The only thing I would say, I think it ultimately comes down to when you talk about greatness and you talk about Hall of Fame qualifications. I think it comes down to who did you fight, who did you beat, and who beat you in and around your prime. If you want to talk about world titles, particularly in an era when they have more sanctity, you could talk about dominance at world level and the length of a reign. You could talk about coming back from adversity and maybe the second chapter of a career like a George Foreman or Muhammad Ali. And, you know, you can talk about... I don't think head-to-heads is relevant, like I say, because that is hypothetical. But I think it comes down to who you fought and who you beat and who beat you anywhere near your prime. And you throw in things like longevity and all the rest of it, you know. But you know what? With Canelo, because obviously Canelo's a first ballot Hall of Famer, he will get in, and I don't have any resistance to that. But when we talk about greatness, I'm thinking Ali coming back when he was supposed to be on a hangman's scaffold against Foreman. That's greatness. Sugar Ray coming out of retirement, wildcard to beat Marvin Hagler so sensationally. And that victory gets devalued because of all the idiots who say that Hagler was robbed, when that's nonsense. But that is greatness. Canelo's never done anything like that. You know, and all right, I realise some fighters can't have that in their story, even though they might still be great. But for the most part, to me, that's greatness. What Ali was not always supposed to win every fight he ever had. As fantastically great as he was, and he may have been the best exponent of the sweet science in history. I don't say that he definitely wasn't. You know how much I love him, regardless if I might argue for somebody else in that complete top spot, but ultimate top spot. But Canelo has never done anything like that kind of thing, and to me, that's what greatness is really based on. He is obviously he's a fine fighter. He has a lot going for him, and he's lasted. You know, his longevity has been superb, but he is still part of the machine. And it feels like he always has been, or certainly for about 15 years. You know?
Well, you know, once fighters start controlling, the analogy between human beings and what we're doing to the earth is the same thing as what human beings are doing to boxing. Like they're taking the soul out of it. They're using it for themselves, for their own, and they don't acknowledge what a great opportunity they have when they're in it, and they should be giving something back to it. And when you give something back to it, you nourish it and you cause it to grow, and it'll be good for people after you. But when people want to use the earth or the world of boxing for their own gratification and their own, their own exploits or their own they want to enrich themselves with it. It does nothing but take away from the sport. And I'll give you the perfect example is this guy that's, what's his face, who's fighting Tyson. You know what I mean?
Like, oh yeah.
Like it's just they're just ravaging. They're eating like James and the Giant Peach. Remember that story? They're eating the peach, and there's all, you know what I mean. And the only thing that's going to happen is the rock or the seed or whatever is going to drop, and there's going to be no more. It's.
Do you know, with people like that, I blame the audience to a degree, and I blame anybody who publicises it, because I've got a little platform on Facebook. I've got a platform with you on here. And I don't talk about the stuff. I don't report it. I don't put pictures of them up. I don't say the guy's name. Obviously, Mike Tyson I will talk about. Of course I will. But I do not give any oxygen to those events. And I never will. And I don't care what any argument anybody makes for them. To me, that's me doing my bit. All right, Silk? I have I've got a little bit of clout. Not much, but I have... People know me and expect me to... If something's happening in boxing, they expect me to talk about it. And they can find that discussion on my Facebook page, and I will not give oxygen to that stuff. That is the way I feel I should behave, and consequently, that's my take on it.
Yeah, no, you're definitely you're a friend to the sport. You know what I mean, and you put it in a place. I know you're like people. I honestly have to say, if boxing had more people like you at the higher levels, this sport would be doing like some incredible things.
And like for John Scully as well. If he, I mean, I know he works with Beterbiev and stuff, but if he had some administrational power and clout and a bit of a collective, then we could maybe be in a better position, right?
Yeah, John is definitely like, he's one of those guys that he's a protector of the sport. You know what I mean? Yeah. And he would help grow the sport. He's a friend of it. He loves it. It's a part of it.
And he also helps fighters once they're finished with the sport. He does a lot of work to help those guys.
He understands that part of it, and probably a lot more would be done for fighters afterwards. Following his lead.
Do you know what Scully says? He talks about Gerald McClellan, Wilfred Benitez, and Richard Colon, to name three. And it's stricken ex-fighters. And he says Floyd Mayweather could give them $5,000 a month and he wouldn't even notice. And it's not necessarily, we shouldn't necessarily put that on Floyd, but and he says that too. He said, but he could. He said,
Well, but it's the nature of it. It's interesting because with Turkey Al-Sheikh, I was talking with friends about him offering the pay-per-view fights at, what was it, like $15
He wanted to cost $20 instead of $90. Good man.
Instead of $90. And I don't believe, it would be ungreedy of him, and that would be great, all well and good, but I still don't think people would still try to rip off they'd try to get it for free anyway. Who wouldn't?
Don't let me ever catch you trying to stream fights illegally.
That's not my thing. I mean, if it somehow ends up in my lap, I'm sorry, like somebody else did it, but it's not me myself. I would never go out of my way to
find a stream. It's has to be sent to you on the WhatsApp group. I know, but
well, you admit is there something you want to admit to me?
Well, as you know, there's a lot. See, I pay for. I'll talk to you about my boxing subscriptions. I used to pay for DAZN. I don't anymore.
Hey, listen, we don't have to go there. Shh. Let's just continue on.
All right. I pay for TNT Sports, which is the Queensbury thing, because I get that as part of my whole deal with my phone and everything else. Anything else that I may have to be creative, I may have to look for other things. I'll buy a pay-per-view sometimes. But anyway, like you say, Turkey wants to force the price down, and we have. I can't remember what the price is for this big Wembley blockbuster this weekend with Joshua Dubois as the main event.
Is he doing that? Is Turkey Al-Sheikh doing? Is he doing that?
Absolutely. It's the first London Riyadh season card.
Wow.
And it's a big stacked bill. You've got Liam Gallagher will be making an appearance on there, singing a few numbers. There's a rumor
Liam Gallagher. He's the guy from the music act, the singer
from Oasis, massive rock stars, and people are losing their minds in the UK trying to get tickets for their reformation for their reunion tour next year. But here's the thing: there's a big rumor that his
No,
brother's
but
going to
that's
join him on
him.
stage.
He's performing. He's fighting on that card.
He's singing on the fucking card.
Oh, he's singing on it. Oh, okay.
He's
Well,
a
you didn't
singer.
say that.
Yeah. Sometimes sometimes less is more, and if you just not talk sometimes when something's being said, by the time I've finished, you probably be enlightened.
You're Ben. Come on, between you and I, you're never finished.
All right,
Like my mom used to say, you got more to say than you got to eat.
Yeah, well, that's a great old proverb. Listen, so Liam Gallagher is going to be singing as. Have you seen the way they have the singers on some of these Rio season shows, right? So
Yeah.
there's rumours that Noel, his brother, is going to join him on stage, and it's going to be this legendary historical moment because they've not performed since God knows when, and it'll
Because
be a
they fight
prelude to
each
their.
other all the time, right?
Yeah, they don't get on very well, but so yeah. So anyway, there's rumours. It'd be a big deal if it's a big deal anyway. But there'd be a big deal if they both get on stage. But other people are saying no. Noel was offered £1 million and he said no. He flat refused it, even for like a 15-minute performance, because he doesn't
Why?
want to do it.
Do you know? Do you know why? Like he
I
hates
don't
his
know
brother
why.
that much?
Well, no, because it can't be that because they're reforming and they're going to be doing gigs next year. Everybody in this country's been losing their minds to get tickets. It's like
Yeah, I mean,
selling
their
kidneys
biggest
to get
song is
tickets.
Wonder Wheel, right? They had one album.
Wonderwall.
Oh yeah,
Wonderwall.
okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was Wonder Wheel. Didn't they have that? Isn't that the reason why they have that big wheel in London there by the water?
No, I'm afraid to say it isn't. The Millennium Wheel was something else. It wasn't connected to Oasis in any way. But they had a bunch of other big songs as well. I don't think I get the impression they weren't as big in the States, but
No. But you know, everyone was like, "This is the second coming of the Beatles." I was like, "Hold on a minute, put your brakes on." Yeah, Beatles is a different beast altogether. But they were talented. I mean, they had a great sound.
They were, and they had the swagger. They felt like an organic cultural phenomenon that had to happen. It perfectly kind of encapsulated the mid-90s in the UK, certainly, and that culture. But you were talking about the Beatles. The Oasis were ultimately they were more derivative, weren't they? They were derivative, and it was kind of knowingly done. Whereas the Beatles was more of a who is Little Holmes? It says hello, Ben and Silk. Who is Little Holmes? Sounds kind of like a cute name. I don't know.
No, it sounds great. Sounds like a fighter who, you know what I mean? People say, well, you got to jab just like Larry Holmes, and they, put a little there.
Well, do you remember Little Haggler? Do you remember Freddie Norwood, who was called Little Haggler?
I remember Freddie Norwood, but I didn't know he was called Little Haggler.
They called him Lil Haggler, as in, Lil.
Lil, yeah.
Yeah, a bit like Jack Johnson called himself Lil Arthur. That was his favourite name for himself, apparently. I believe they've done an exclusive with Netflix, hence why they can't perform together before the tour. That is David Evans, boxing border control whip, amongst other things, Diamond Geezer, who says that he believes the brothers have done a deal with Netflix whereby they cannot appear on stage together before the actual gigs next year.
Well,
the American DJs are quite dismissive of Oasis when they try to break the eye. Do you know the smaller version?
Thank you for that.
The smaller version, you know who it is, Ben? I probably do, but I'm being dense. Sometimes when I'm in the zone, I'm not thinking as easily as I do in the day-to-day brain. I am actually trying to keep it together when we're on air. But what was I going to say? There are times, Silk, when I feel like branching out and talking about other things other than boxing. Like we're talking about Oasis right now. You're talking about the Beatles. Boxing will always be the most important thing ever. But there's times when I feel like branching out and thinking we could talk about other things. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm sure. I mean, listen, everything relates to boxing anyway, because everything you want to attain in this world takes a fight in order to get there. But I do want to talk to you about, like, next week is Joshua versus Dubois.
Yeah.
Okay, this is going to be an interesting fight. What do you think? I mean, I know we're going to do something on it as we get closer.
Yeah. But we can have a kind of hors d'oeuvre of a preview as well. I go with Joshua by KO, maybe inside of 6 rounds. It is my feeling right now. I don't write Daniel Dubois off. I'm a good friend with Don Charles, who trains Dubois, and I think you know what. If you're making a case for Dubois, he's had better competition in his last 3 fights than Joshua has. Joshua has fought in his last 3 fights. He's fought Helenius, Wallin, and Ngannou. Dubois has been in with Usyk, Miller, and Hrgovic, and he does feel like he's come of age, Daniel, and has toughened up, and he's become has become a man essentially in the ring, and he's got his he seems to have toughened up and got his self-belief now from the guy that capitulated against Joe Joyce a number of years ago. So I wouldn't be shocked if Dubois were to pull it off, and if he hits Joshua on the chin, he can cause him some problems for sure.
I heard they've sparred before, and he already had him on. I don't know. Do they have a Queer Street in London?
Yes, it's Old Compton Street in Soho. Why? Do you want me to show you around when you come next time?
No, I was wondering because they have a Queer Street out here. It's like when you hit a guy on the chin and he starts walking a certain way, they say, "Oh, he's on Queer Street." That not. I don't mean it in a sexual way, which of course your mind will automatically revert to, but I don't think that way. Let's keep our minds up out the gutter.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying is, like, to me, Joshua and Dubois. Well, first of all, Dubois, they'd sparred before. They had some history, and Dubois, I'd heard, had Joshua out on his feet, if not dropped.
That's what they say. People talk about gym stories all the time, don't they? These gym fables. Yeah. I heard Lawrence Coley, the cruiserweight, is supposed to have knocked Joshua out or had him in trouble. Listen, like I say, sometimes I do wonder, Silk, if the reinvention and the rejuvenation of Anthony Joshua has been a bit smoke and mirrors because, all right, so he knocked out the MMA fighter who gave Fury hell, and he did a number on Otto Wallin, who didn't exactly cover himself in glory that night. Before that, he looked pretty sketchy against Hellenius until he found the coup de grace finish. Mm-hmm. So I wonder, I look at the last few fights that Dubois has had, and I think they've really seasoned him. I've been more used to him than Joshua's recent competition. So who knows, But
do you think tougher fight seasons you better, or do you think you don't think they soften you up? You don't think they soften you up in any way? I mean, I can see if he's more confident because of those wins. If he thinks those wins are, if to what he thought his capacity was, I could see that being an advantage because you're more confident. And that means even though you may not be able to do it, you think you can. So therefore, you possibly can.
When you talk about tougher fights against elite competition, right? Does it galvanize you or does it deplete you ultimately? Of the two of us, I think you'd be vastly more qualified to answer that question with all due deference. Do you not think? Because if you look at your experience in the ring and mine, I think we would have to ask you what the truth is there because I wouldn't. No,
well, you know what? The truth is, like, really, the truth is everyone has their own truth because everyone's experience, how they process failure and success, everyone processes them in an individual way differently. So what it's really hard to make a prediction based on that alone. But because what we tend to project how it would affect me. I think that's how the rest of the world is affected as well. And it's not necessarily so. Some people get, dropped and beat up in the gym and they get in the ring and they're just monsters. You know what I mean? And then
they said Holyfield was struggling with his sparring partners in the build up to the Tyson fight in '96 when he shocked the world. There was a guy called Gary Bell that people said was pushing Evander around. Michael Spinks said his heavyweight sparring wasn't going very well in the Holmes camp. He said they were pushing him around, and he was starting to think maybe this is not a very good idea. And then on the night, he got it right, didn't he?
Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the wonder the beauty. Like fighters have to. It's like every fighter's like this in shape Rubik's Cube, you know what I mean? And you need to know how to kind of like manipulate and move around and adjust and adapt and all the rest of that kind of stuff in order to win. And that's what it comes down to. So if the job's done right in training, you know what I mean? You could fail all the way through training, but as long as it comes together the night of the fight, that's kind of like what happens. As long as your trainers are teaching you the right patterns, that's the key right there. If they're doing the right patterns that are going to affect you in your fight against this individual, great. But if they're showing you something that isn't even relevant to the fight itself or to the type of style you're fighting, you're more or less going to be in for a long night. And that's why personally myself, I put so much of the heat on trainers. You know what I mean? Less on fighters than I put on trainers, because if you kind of like put the right stuff, if you teach this guy the right stuff and he's able to do it, and then why shouldn't it take effect when it's in the ring? The man really does have a chance to beat an individual if you're showing the right things, and if it's enforced. If you continue to, you make those, you expect those levels of expectancies from your fighter. If you show him the right things, he gets in the ring and he can't do it, then okay, you could put it on the fighter. But if you haven't shown the fighter what to do and he gets in there, and no, it's not the fighter's fault. 100% trainer. He's the one that sets the pace to the fight.
Well, next week you'll have Ben Davison trained Anthony Joshua versus the Don Charles trained.
Yeah. And he seems to be very good. They seem to be working together very well, I guess, right?
Well, Ben Davison and Joshua, yeah?
Yeah.
But the guy in the you'll notice him if you look for him. The guy who kind of hands up and holds a bucket, as it were, even don't want to be disparaging, but is a fella called Barry Smith, a very big, imposing sort of guy, heavyweight sized fella, white guy. His name's Barry Smith, and I worked with Barry for years in gyms. He used to train the white collars with us. We worked pro corners together. I used to get him to do my fighters' hands and cuts. And he just struck the big time because Ben liked him, and he used to let when Barry had the West Ham amateur gym in the daytime for pros, he let Ben use it sometimes, and then Ben got his own gym and took Barry with him, and now Barry's in all these big fights. He's been in the corner for, he was training Joe Cordina for the Shakur Stevenson fight, although Shakur's pulled out now, as you may have heard. But Barry has struck it lucky now, and he's in that big spotlight. But he was just a working, jobbing trainer, like so many of the ones people have rubbed shoulders with over the years on the London boxing scene. But now he's in the big time just because he stuck with it, and so you'll look out for Big Barry Smith on the night.
I definitely will.
Saturday.
Well, neither one of I definitely will keep an eye out for him. It's an interesting story. I love the behind the scenes stories, the stuff that happens like that. But between Joshua and Dubois, neither one of these guys appeared to have any special defensive attributes that I could think about. So it's almost like whoever's going to get off first seems to be the one that's going to win. It's really just that basic. Whoever
that's
has
what people are saying. But
sorry?
That's what people are saying. Obviously, we're going to it more in depth next Friday. But
there's just no defensive attributes. I don't see anybody slipping or blocking purposely. I'm just trying to think in my mind when I look at them. Is there anyone that catches that catches a punch, slips a punch, rolls back?
I don't know if you remember Dubois versus Hergovich, but he was eating right hands like they were hors d'oeuvres at a private view.
Who's the horse?
I'm not a fan of. 1 second. Graham Harrison says, "I'm not a fan of Davison. However, plenty of top-level fighters seem to be." I don't want to get into that, particularly the cult of the trainer and when a trainer gets hit. I have various thoughts about it. I've seen these guys in the gym, but we will get into this in more detail next week, right? Can I ask you for an early prediction? You can change your mind next week if you want, but I've said Joshua KO inside the first half of the fight. We can both change our minds next week, but what are you saying this Sunday?
I think it could be pick'em. It could be a pick'em fight only because, but
so you're going to defer until next week.
Let me just, if I can get 30 seconds to run it through the computer. What am I thinking right now? My initial instinct, yes, is definitely Joshua, and I may be jumping the gun because because he knocked out somebody who he should have knocked out in one round as well, or 2 rounds. But I'm good right now. I'm going to go with Joshua. I'd have to go with Joshua.
Same here. Okay. All right. Well, let's reconvene next Friday. I don't know. Are you busy with that Ali musical next Friday, or are you cool for next Friday?
No, actually, Ali the musical we break Wednesday, so I will be free and ready to do this.
So obviously there's going to be some media events all week in London, like a public workout, I imagine, final press conference definitely, and a weigh-in. Mr. Gary Stretch is supposed to be coming here to London tomorrow, where supposedly I'm meeting him for dinner tomorrow night at 8, hopefully. And
where you guys going to eat?
It's the typical thing that you'd ask, just as I'm trying to close up. I don't know. I mean, Desi is going to pick the place, to be honest with you. What
is Desi coming with him?
I guess if she wasn't coming, he probably wouldn't be coming in the first place. But regardless, the point being, it's not really it matters not whether Desi's coming or where we're going to eat. What is important to you and to the people who watch the show is that we will go to the press conferences and get some content. Okay, it's a bit of a free for all at that level, and I don't know what we can get and who we can get, but we'll certainly try. And then hopefully by Friday we should have some more content, and we'll all make our predictions, right?
Yeah, we'll have a moment to do the garrulous conversation.
Yeah, but okay, are we good? So
yeah, well, someone asked a question, you turned it off. That's not very polite.
No, they didn't. He just said it's not a question. He said probably a posh restaurant. That is in response to you saying where are you guys going to eat. I know what I'm doing, Silk. I've got everything on lock. 3 fights at the public workout. 3 fights at the public workout in Wembley Arena. That is interesting. The public workout has got 3 actual pro fights on us. Matchroom did that before once, back in 2000.
What do you mean 3 fights?
They have professional fights as a little hors d'oeuvre at the public workout. They actually have professional fights as part of it, and it's free.
Oh, wow.
It's a free event. They did that once, in 2016, in the build-up, the public workout for Joshua versus Dominic Breazeale, and I actually got thrown out that night in disgrace. It was very different days for me in 2016.
Yeah.
But
what did you do?
I was just drunk and obnoxious. And Eddie
so,
Hearn said to me,
do you remember did you say things to people, or were you physically abusive?
I was just very obnoxious and kind of difficult. Apparently, Eddie Hearn said I was being a complete pest all night, and he said basically it won't be a long-term problem, but you keep your head down and let us get this event out of the way because everybody's talking about it right now, and it's just not cool for you to come to the weigh-in and stuff. But that was when I was still drinking,
Yeah,
so,
and did that help you sober?
Not in itself. I mean, it's grist to the mill of the shame and the kind of the fact you're enjoying it less. But I didn't get so. That was
so when you hear somebody talk, when you bring it up, or when you think about it, when you hear somebody talk about it, that's kind of one of the things that helps you stay away from that kind of
no. Listen, we could talk about. It's a more complicated discussion talk about alcoholism and recovery, but that doesn't really. I think about it now, and it can't bother me now. I don't have any desire to shut the door on the past. I look at it now, and I just think, thank God I'm not there. There's a picture of me that night holding Joshua's IBF belt upside down in the changing room, and I just look at that picture when it comes up as a memory or whatever, and I just think. I thank God that I'm not in that space today. You know what I mean? But it was at one point I'd messed things up so bad that they said I was banned from Matchroom shows and not welcome and all the rest of it, banned for life. And when I got sober, all that changed, and that was that's the miracle of recovery.
So when you got sober, you went back to them and you said, "Listen, can I?"
Yeah, I bumped into Eddie at a neutral show. I bumped into Eddie when I was working for Boxing Social. I bumped into him at a Sauerland promotion. It was the Super 6 thing, I believe. World Boxing Series, I think it was. And Eddie was there because he was managing a guy called what was his name? It was a guy, Jamie Cox, who was boxing George Groves in the first round of this tournament. And I interviewed him at the show because it wasn't a Matchroom press conference, and I said,
"You said Cox Groves."
Jamie Cox. Why do you do this? Jamie Cox versus George Groves. Jamie Cox.
Groves. I thought you said
Groves.
I thought you said GROW Groves. I thought you said. Why do you take such offense? Why do you take such offense to an honest mistake? Oh my God. Okay, sorry. Continue. I was really interested in your story. Go.
Yeah. Because I didn't necessarily want to talk about it, but you asked me a question about it. What was I saying? So Eddie was there on neutral ground because I wouldn't have gone if it was a Matchroom presser because I was building up to writing them an email or sending somebody a text, whatever. And then I did the interview with him and I said, "Listen, Eddie, I've made a few changes recently." And he said, "Listen, Ben, it's not a problem for me." He said, "Send our press officer an email, but I can't." He said, "It's not a problem from my perspective. You're welcome as far as I'm concerned." And so that was cool. It was. I don't have an issue going there now, and I don't get myself into trouble anymore, and I don't make enemies like that anymore. And if people have still got it in for me, I ignore them. I don't give them a time of day, So
I got it. Okay, nice.
But,
all right. Well, I'm glad to see you on the better side for it. But you don't think Cox Groves is that's kind of funny?
Cox versus Groves. Yeah, Cox versus Groves is what it is.
Oh, Cox versus Groves. You said Cox
Jamie
Groves.
Cox. Jamie Cox spelled with an X.
I was like, okay. Sorry?
I get it. Jamie Cox is spelt with an X. And those of us who, you know, who are obviously acquainted with the British boxing scene, we just know who that is anyway.
Yeah.
So, and then there's George Groves, you should certainly be aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know who that is, right?
Yes, I do.
Yeah. But for what it's worth, I think you would have beat him. But all right, guys, thanks for tuning in as always. Hope you didn't mind too much, you know, the kind of irreverent kind of interjections of sabotage of my good friend the Silk here. It's partly what makes the show what it is. Let's face it. It's difficult to close with you as well because I don't know what you're going to do or say. So all I will say is keep watching, keep supporting, stay involved, watch this space, like, share, subscribe, spread the word. Peace.